in this part of the Bhagavatam, Vamandev has asked for charity of 3 steps of land. And he has glorified the lineage in which Bali Maharaj has appeared in order to make the point that people in his lineage never break their promises. He wanted to make this, impress this point upon him. So you should always keep your promise in all circumstances. And now I'm asking only for 3 steps of land. So Bali Maharaj thought it rather a trifle to ask for such exiguous amounts of property. He is right now the master of the whole cosmos. So why Vamandev is asking for so little? So he thought it kind of laughable. But anyway, he says, fine, take 3 steps. And here Shukracharya is protesting, knowing that this is Lord Vishnu and that Bali Maharaj would be cheated in Shukracharya's estimation, at least, and that he will take everything. So here he is protesting the keeping of the promise. He's trying to encourage Bali Maharaj to break his promise to Lord Vamandev. And he wants to give various reasons here. And in this verse, one such reason is being given. As a general point, it is mentioned, this is earlier on in Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, but we probably know it well. I'll just share the verse here. Guru nasasyat, swajano nasasyat, pita nasasyat, janani nasasyat, daivam natasya napatishya sasyan, namochaya yasamupeta mrityu. So this verse is saying, if namochaya yasamupeta mrityum, if one is unable to deliver his dependent from the path of samsara, repeated birth and death, then one should not accept dependence. And so then a list is given of the different types of persons who accept dependence. Guru nasasya, one should not become a guru. Swajana nasasya, one should not become a relative. Swajana. Seems pretty unavoidable, but okay. Pita nasasya, one should not become a father or a mother. One should not become a daivam, a deity, a worshipable deity. One should not become a husband if they're not able to perform the responsibility of delivering the dependent from birth and death. And this statement of Rishabhadev, this is from 5th canto works, can be said in the opposite way also. If one discovers that they have a dependent who cannot perform their function, then discover such a person who's accepting dependence is unable to perform the function of delivering them from samsara, then such a person is fit to be rejected. So a guru is fit to be rejected, a relative, a father, mother, a husband, a daiva. They can be rejected if they cannot perform this function, or if they fail to meet this particular responsibility of giving a person basically Krishna consciousness. So the example of one who rejects the guru nasasya, the example of one who rejects the guru because he was unable to perform the function of giving proper instruction for coming out of the cycle of birth and death is Bali Maharaj. So Bali Maharaj, Guru Nasasyat, he rejected his guru. Because this guru, this is like a family guru, Shukracharya, means family guru basically. And he rejected this guru because his guru was antagonistic to the principle of sacrificing everything for the cause of Vishnu. A similar chastisement of sorts was given by Prahlad Maharaj also, when his father asked the question, how it is that you become a devotee. So Prahlad Maharaj first says, don't worry, it's impossible for people like you to become devotees of Krishna. Matirna Krishna, paratasvatova, mita abhipadyeta grihavritana. Prahlad Maharaj says, for persons like you who are grihavrita, your vow is to try to enjoy in the house. The house is the symbol of material enjoyment in Vedantic literatures often. It is also the symbol of like a prison, basically, that keeps one bound to the material world. So if one is grihavritana, their vrata is to try to enjoy in the house or enjoy in the material world, then matir na krishna abhipadyeta, then they cannot develop Krishna consciousness by their own efforts, by the efforts of others, or by a combination of both. Adanta go birvishatamta mishram puna punashcharvita charvanana. Such persons have untamed senses, adantago, and because of their untamed sensual predilections, they gradually move towards the hell, chewing that which has already been chewed, trying the same old thing, getting the same old paltry results, but can't give it up. So then Hiranyakashipu may respond, well, what about you're criticizing me, but your teachers are brahmanas. His teachers actually, the teachers' names were Shanda and Amarka, I believe. They were actually sons of Shukracharya, interestingly enough. They were sons of Shukracharya, who we're hearing about in this passage of the section of the Bhagavatam. So the sons of Shukracharya, they are brahmanas. So, you're criticizing me, Matirna Krishna, I'll not be able to develop Krishna consciousness. But your teachers, they teach, they know so many subject matters. If this Krishna consciousness had actually been an important subject matter, they would have taught it to you. So certainly they are beyond reproach. That is the sense of the Purva Paksha, the objection of Hiranyakashipu. So in response to that, Prahlad Maharaj says this other verse, which is also famous, Na te vidu sartakatem hi Vishnu, darashaya ye bahir artamanina, yatayantan dhair upaniyamanas te pishatamtra urudhamni bhada. I should pull these verses up. So there he says, Na te vidu sartakatem hi Vishnu. So my so-called teachers who are having the knowledge in so many areas, they actually do not know what is the true self-interest of the living entity. They do not know that the swa-arta means the one's true self-interest lies in Vishnu. Nate vidu swarta gatem hi Vishnu. They don't know this. They don't know the important part of the knowledge. Just like even modern education, they teach so many things, but the important parts they leave out, like character building and so on. Those parts they don't teach. Only how to do things at best or how to pass the tests they teach, but they don't teach the important part like character reformation and so on. So of course now in 2020, we see the results of such so-called education. Natavidu Swartagaten Vishnu. So these so-called teachers, they leave out the important part, which is Vishnu. Dharashaya ye bahira arta manina. They are dharashaya. Dharashaya means, ashaya basically refers to the heart, the antakarna, the heart. And dur means like bad hearts. They have bad hearts. That means their inner world is compromised by their lower nature. And as a result of that compromise of the inner world, bahir artamanina. Bahir artamanina is that they considered as arta. Manina means like their consideration. Their consideration of what is actually arta is bahir. It is external things. Just like now, this is a sidebar, but just like now, just talking to different devotee friends and so on, 2020 has been a very demoralizing year for many people of the world. Of course, financially, it's been demoralizing. Perhaps in terms of the mental health, it's been demoralizing. In terms of spirituality, it's been demoralizing because religious people don't have access to their congregations so easily anymore. And of course, Zoom is a okay substitute, but it doesn't really make up for the actual congregational experience. So in so many ways, this 2020 year has been very, very demoralizing. And probably or likely due to cultural conditioning, it is a tendency of the contemporary man and woman to think of success in terms of external things, like how much money they have, how good they look, how many degrees they're holding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's just a cultural tendency, even I think amongst religious or spiritual people like ourselves, we also are products of the culture to a large degree. So although we have our spiritual understanding of things, our visceral feeling about things is generally matches the culture that we're a part of. And so although we think of, I think all of us here would likely think of success in terms of like inner world development, we still kind of culturally feel that success is in external achievements, with how many programs I was able to do, and could I get my business off the ground, et cetera. These sorts of external criteria we look at. And 2020 has been a year where the external situation has been highly curtailed and delimited by government lockdowns and the COVID pandemic and so on. So we're been kind of obliged to look within. And I was just talking to some friends just about my own sort of feelings of demoralization during the year, and telling them that I was preaching to myself that I am forced to consider success for the year of 2020 in terms of my inner life. Like if I can come out of 2020 just mentally stable, I'm going to consider myself a very successful individual for 2020. And we were in this way, we were talking with friends and having the jokes with each other, that we are forced to, because the external world is delimiting our other sort of external criteria for success, we're forced to think of success in terms of internal achievement. So Prahlad Maharaj's critique here of his teachers, sons of Shukracharya, is that they don't know what is Twa-artha, because they have spoiled hearts, drashe, and they only consider external success. Bahir arthamanina, they don't consider the inside success. Andanya tandar upanayamanas tepisha tantra urudhamni bhada. So they're like blind man leading the other blind man into the ditch. Just like I'm a blind person, so I type into the YouTube how to become happy, and then I hear from other blind people. And in that way, I suffer all the more. That is what is going on. I am blind, and then I go and hear from other blind persons. And then Teyapisha Tantra Urudhamni Bhada. Because of this, the strong ropes of material nature bind me to my own suffering. This is what's going on. So anyway, so Prahlad Maharaj's point, the point I'm bringing out here is that if the guru is not able to deliver the dependent with proper knowledge and instruction, then such a guru can be rejected. So Bali Maharaj is the example of this person. And Prahlad Maharaj is also the grandfather of Bali Maharaj. He also set this example that his own gurus, there were Kula gurus, family gurus, Shanda and Amarka, sons of Shukracharya, he rejected them also because they cannot give the instruction that leads to Vishnu Bhakti or Krishna Bhakti. So that point is will be highlighted, of course, in this pastime. It's just interesting to bring up here. So Shukracharya is giving the anti-Krishna Bhakti instructions here and saying, don't surrender everything to God. Rather, you try to enjoy yourself, or you have to consider your own enjoyment. That is his point here. So his argument in this particular verse, the whole passage is this point. Shukracharya speaking antagonistically to the complete surrender to Krishna. That is the passage. And in this particular verse, he's giving one such argument why he should not surrender even 3 steps of land to Vamandev. So he is telling what Vamandev will actually do here. So I don't know how he had the inside scoop of what Vamandev was about to do. Shukracharya is not generally presented as a very highly elevated individual necessarily, but somehow he had the inside scoop on what Vishnu was going to do. So he gives the inside scoop. He looks like a short guy, so you think his 3 steps won't take much, but actually, kramato gam padaikena. In his first step, he will take the whole bhumando. Gam. The word gam is a word that is often used to refer to the Bhumandala. Bhumandala, anyway, is like and Bhagavatam cosmology, there's a massive land mass that stretches across the universe. And that massive land mass is called the Bhumandala. Sometimes it is translated as Earth, but it's not just Earth as we generally think of it. It is a huge landmass. The universe is said to be somewhere upward of 4 billion miles either way. And so this Bhumanda landmass stretches all the way across the universe. Anyway, so Kramato Ghampa Daikena means in his first step, he will take the whole Bhumanda. So this huge mass of land that stretches across the universe, he will take that. Dvitiyena divam vibho. In the second step, Dutiya, in the second step, he will take the divam vibho. Vibho is a name for Krishna, the great one. Divam, he will take the planetary systems. So first step, the landmass that stretches across the universe. And the second step, he will take the whole upward planetary systems. Swarga Loka, Jana Loka, Mahaloka, Tapaloka, Brahma Loka. All these lokas are there upward. In the second step, he will take that. And then Kamcha Kayena Mahata. Kayena Mahata means the great body. So this refers to the universal form of the Lord, just like the one we hear about in the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. With that universal form, Kamcha, Kam and Cha means and Kam means the ether, and it refers to the outer space. Also called as the antariksha, means the outer space. So with his universal form, he will take the entire outer space also. So all Bhumanda will be there in the first step. Second step, he will take the whole upward planetary systems. And then he will expand his universal form and take the whole outer space. So Tarti Yasya Kutogati. So where will he put his third step? He's asking this question to Bali Maharaj. Where will he put his third step? So you'll not be able to keep your promise, you'll be chastised. Therefore, better not give this in charity. That is his basic argument here. Don't give it in charity. Somehow he had the inside scoop of what Vaman Dev was just about to do. So in Prabhupada's purport, first part, he just reiterates the inside scoop given by Shukracharya. And then in this line, he makes this point, kind of an important point. He says Shukracharya did not know how the Lord protects his devotee. The devotee must risk everything in his possession for the service of the Lord, but he is always protected and never defeated. So that's kind of the punchline of this particular purport. As a general point of morality, this is mentioned by Chanaka Pandit, and Prabhupada will quote it in this passage of the Bhagavatam, 8th canto, but he also quotes it earlier in an earlier pastime in the 6th canto with Didichi, who Didichi also had to give everything for the service of the Lord. But before the service of the Lord, as a general principle of morality, one is supposed to sacrifice their possessions for better causes. So Prabhupada is fond of quoting this particular statement of Chanaka Pandit from the Niti Shastra. Niti Shastra means the scriptures that deal with the moral principles. So Prabhupada writes here, I'm just sharing this thing. He says, Chanaka Pandit says, Sani mite varam tiago vinashe niyatesati. Everything within this material world will be destroyed, right? And therefore, one should use everything for good purposes. If one is advanced in knowledge, sorry, I should have highlighted that just so you can see where I'm reading. If one is advanced in knowledge, he must always be prepared to sacrifice anything for a better cause. I'm just pause there. So this is considered a general principle of morality that whatever you have in your possession, you should be prepared to sacrifice for a better cause. One may cite the example of the patriot. Of course, these sorts of examples don't work too well nowadays that we have information of how demonic these wars are. But try to imagine a righteous war like the one we hear about in Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata, for example. So if you are a patriot or someone who is fighting for the side of righteousness, you have to leave your family, you have to leave your house, you have to leave all your possessions to go fight in this righteous war. Let's just pretend that such a thing exists today. You have to leave everything, but no one will criticize you for doing that. No one will criticize you for leaving family, leaving your house, leaving your possessions, leaving your work responsibilities to go fight in such a righteous war, because it's considered like a moral, it's considered higher on the moral scale, so to speak, that this is a righteous war that must be fought for the side of good versus evil. And every good man is required for fighting this war. So even though you leave behind everything, you are glorified for that. That is a fact. Previously, even in the, sort of modern era of things, I'm talking about like even maybe a couple centuries ago, up to the World War II maybe area. Anyway, any time before people became fully aware of how demonic a lot of the modern wars are, people would leave their families to go fight wars, and everyone would glorify them for that. So that's considered a general principle of morality, that all your possessions should be sacrificed for a greater cause. Now, this moral principle, when taken to its highest extent in reality, spiritual reality, is giving in charity or sacrificing all one's possessions for Krishna. That is the highest extent of the practice of this particular principle. And the archetype of such a practice is Bali Maharaj. Sani mite varam tyago vinashaniyate sati. Since everything will anyway be destroyed or be taken away from one, better I give it for a better cause with profit. I think Vaisheshika Prabhu, he was in Bhakti Center a year ago, and he was speaking about this principle, which he called as preemptive giving. He was talking about this particular idea here from the Chanaka Pandit, and he gave the example. He gave this term preemptive giving, which I thought was a really cool sort of term. And he gave an example. He says that when he goes to Govardhan in October for Kartik, he will go to Govardhan. And he would always leave one donation for the Govardhan ashram that he would stay at. He would always leave one donation for the Govardhan ashram, either like at the end of his trip or like when he arrived, he would give it at the end of the day or something. He had like a sort of system. Anyway, when he arrived to Govardhan, apparently all his stuff or some of his important stuff got snagged by like either a thief or a monkey. I couldn't remember which one. He was telling the story, and it got snagged. And so the donation he was going to give somehow got taken. And so he said, just see, I was going to use this money, of course, for giving to Krishna, but there was a delay, and now it has been taken away by daiva, by circumstances. He says, so since that happened to me, now when I go to Govardhan, he said, the very first thing I do is give the donation immediately. Because anyway, somehow or other, by tricks of chance, this is a phrase that Prabhupada would use, tricks of chance. Somehow by tricks of chance, I can lose it suddenly. And therefore, since it will anyway be lost, let me give it before it is taken away. And that way also gain eternal profit because I've given to the Lord, so the Lord will certainly protect me. He was giving basically, I butchered it a little bit, the story. You can ask him directly for the proper details, but that is the general gist of it. He was speaking on this particular principle, and he called it as preemptive giving. So since anyway, everything will be taken away from the body to all the possessions we are holding dear, it is considered, it is not only considered moral, but it is the highest pinnacle of devotion called as Atmanivedana, to give all these things in charity to Krishna. Obviously, from an ontological perspective, you can't give in charity to Krishna because everything belongs to Krishna. But from a subjective perspective, the perspective of our own subjectivity being attached to the ego of I and mine, it is a charity. So ontologically speaking, it's not charity, but subjectively speaking, it is charity because we identify with our bodies, we identify with our possessions. I and mine is very strong in us. And so you demonstrate your charitable spirit to Krishna when you give everything for his services. And of course, that comes back to us 100-fold. A very beautiful example of this is the gopis of Braj. When Krishna plays his flute in Vrindavan, they immediately break out of the prisons of their homes. I was mentioning the home as a sort of prison. Usually Vedanta speaks of it this way, at least. They were easily able to break out of the prison, not only of their homes, but of their egos, the prisons of ego, the sense of being the mother, the sense of being the wife, the sense of being the in-law, all these sorts of ego identities that tend to tie the soul down. They were able to break out of the prison of ego and of their homes and run immediately to Krishna. But of course, it was at the risk of everything, because at least in the social culture of the time, if a woman were to go out in the middle of the night without being accounted for, she would basically be considered untouchable. No one would marry her. She would be excommunicated, ostracized. Like we hear about a very rigid social culture, especially for the women in this particular case, when moving about in the middle of the night without any companion or any what I'm word I'm looking for, like a um I'm looking for a particular word, like a someone who watches over someone, like a
Chaperone.
like a chaperone. That's the word I was looking for. Somehow the word chauffeur was coming up in my head. I'm like, it's not chauffeur, a chaperone. So they risked, and as it's mentioned in Gita, social to be socially stigmatized is worse than death. The experience of it can be felt like worse than death, to be excommunicated, socially ostracized. It's very heavy. But they were able to take such a risk for the cause of Krishna. This is a very good example of this leaving behind the ego, the prison of ego that ties the soul down. The gopis are taking as an example. Now, how are we to apply that? That's we're not going into that so much here, just more the principle of it. So yes, so this is the moral principle of charity. You should give in charity whatever you possess for a better cause. And the best cause is the cause of Vishnu. And the highest extent of this principle of charity, at least subjectively speaking, is to give to Krishna everything. And Bali Maharaj, of course, will exemplify this. He is one of the great souls, Mahajanas. Gita and Krishna and Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, Mahatmanas tu mam partha daivam pakritam ashritaha ananya bhajanti manaso. So he's speaking about the great souls, Mahatmas. They're called as Mahatmas, the great souls, and they are Daivam Pakritam Ashrita. They are sheltered or taking shelter of the internal energy of Krishna. And then the result of that is Bhajanti Ananya Manaso. They do bhajan. Bhajanti means to worship Krishna. They do bhajan of Krishna. Ananya Manaso, with minds that know no other. Ananya Manaso means not no, their minds know no other than the pleasure of Krishna, than the happiness of Krishna. So Bali Maharaj wants to show us this principle of bhajan. So normally we think of bhajan as Shravan, Kirtan, Smarna, hearing, chanting about Krishna, remembering Krishna, worshiping the deity, offering the obeisances, vandanam. And Bali Maharaj wants to exhibit this principle of bhajan called as Atmanivedana, where he gives everything, his body, his mind, and his very soul, everything he is given to Krishna, his property, of course. This is also a form of bhajan or worship of Krishna. It's actually very hard to apply. So Srila Rupa Goswami, he does make that point in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that this principle of bhajan is very difficult to apply. As I mentioned in a gloss, due to due to being fettered by the ego and the sense of I and mine, it is very difficult to apply the principle of Atmana Vedana, because that means a surrender of that ego also to Krishna. But anyway, Bali Maharaj will exhibit this in this particular passage of the Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada is commenting on this, that the devotee must risk everything in his possession for the service of the Lord, but he is always protected and never defeated. Like the gopis, like Bali Maharaj, we'll come to see in this pastime also. Shukracharya, of course, he is not able to, because he is, again, Bahir Arthamanina. This word is mentioned here in the purport by Prabhupada. By materialistic calculations, that means Bahir Arthamanina, considering as valuable the external part, not the inner part, just the external part that gives seriousness to. So by material calculation, Shukracharya cannot see how this would be advantageous to Bali Maharaj. And more importantly, because of ego, he would be compromised because he's working for Bali Maharaj, right? So if Bali Maharaj gives everything to Vishnu, what about me? that is the main vexing question. If you give everything to Vishnu, what about me? So in his Bahir Arthamani, not his material consideration, he was not able to justify this charity that Bali Maharaj is about to give. So he tries to convince him against it. and we'll see. Bali Maharaj will reject him. So I'm going to stop there. I always like to leave about 10 minutes for any other points of discussion or anything that someone wants to bring out further.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna. Everyone, you should be able to unmute yourself. Anyone who'd like to contribute, ask a question, appreciate, please go ahead.
The story has three main characters: Bali Maharaj, Vamanadev, and Shukracharya. And the Prabhu was giving class the other day, talking from Bali Maharaj's perspective and from Vamanadev's perspective, and we, as devotees, can learn something from each of these characters. Vamanadev, we are beggars, donation askers. Bali Maharaj, we're in position to offer our possessions in charity. And Shukracharya, we're in the position of saying, wait a minute. When do we cross the line here? There is the word over endeavor. You know, if we're supposed to, when you were reading the verse about risking everything for the service of Krishna, you know, we have this pandemic going on for 9 or 10 months, and our service is distributing Krishna's prasadam to those in need. And we found that the need has dramatically increased. So in an almost mad and illogical, we've been expanding. We've obtained and renovated a second storefront. In the last week, usually we do about 2,500 cooked meals a month. But in the last week, 3 different days, we distributed over 600 meals one day at a time, 3 times in the last week and a half. And of course, financially, it's so like, whoa, I hope we didn't, you know, if this is just, you know, on a course to crash and burn. So we are risking everything, but we've been, I don't want to say chastised, but there are voices that have said to us, you know, Shukracharya, like, don't go too far. You may over endeavor, you might just, you know, risk everything and lose. And therefore, let's just like dial it back a little bit and, you know, be a little conservative. But somehow or other, we're even with everything reducing and going down and closing down, and we're going the other way. And it's a little scary to risk everything. So hearing what you had to say today was kind of consoling, because if we go down swinging, you know, and we are grateful for the opportunity to benefit others, and there is a risk involved. But somehow or other, praying to Krishna, saying, Lord, what do you want? You know, Krishna seems to say, you know, it's not reckless, it's not insanity, it's not greed, it's not ambition. I'm asking you to do this, even though it may seem illogical, impractical. There's another voice saying, go for it. You know, like Prabhupada, so many things. I've been listening to Prabhupada memories again and again, almost every day. And in so many projects, Prabhupada said, go for it. And did, right? Just a comment of, you know, how what you're saying applies to our life. And oh boy, I hope I'm not doing anything crazy here with this massive increase, but we feel Krishna's voice saying, just go for it. Just keep going, expand, you know, be courageous, take a risk, and we'll see what happens. And last night, this tremendous donation came in. It's sitting on the floor behind me. I don't know if you can see it. The whole room is filled with, somebody just donated 2,000 pounds of rice and some dal and spices and stuff. And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? It's like it's an ocean. But of course, our main concern is the finances of the rent for the second kitchen and the maintenance of the vehicle. Just broke down yesterday. We have a vehicle that has 250,000 miles on it. It's hilarious. It's held together with duct tape, but literally, anyway, maybe I talk too much, but just want to share that what you say is actually going on in 3 dimensions. It's not just some ivory tower theoretical academic principle, but I encourage others to take that risk, even though it seems materially impractical. Let me be quiet now. Glories to Prabhupada, whose steps we follow. Oh, glories to Prabhupada.
Jai.
Jai. Yeah.
Okay. If there isn't anything else, then we can finish here also. No need to delay the inevitable.
Hare Krishna. Anybody else would like to add a comment or a question? Please feel free to do so.
Okay. Shall we finish here?
Yes.
One comment.
No,
You can hear it?
You're muted. You're muted.
You can hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, shh.
They tell this story, we've told it before, of this tightrope walker walking across the Niagara Falls from America to United States to Canada. You know that story?
No.
It was on television and everything. They had big crowds on the Canadian side and big crowds on the American side. Very risky, a tightrope going across Niagara Falls, way up in the air, wind blowing, and before he goes, can everybody believe I can do this? And everybody goes, yeah, you can do it. And he goes out there, and it's like really weird. The rope is shaking and the wind is blowing, and he gets all the way across. He finally gets to the other side, and everybody's cheering. And he goes, now I'm going back. And this time I'm going blindfolded. Do you think I can do it? And everybody goes, yeah, you can do it. And I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with this man? So he goes across blindfolded, and it's really scary, and there's like lots of drama. It gets to this, everybody's cheering like mad. He makes it all the way across blindfolded. And then he says, and I'm going back one more time. And this time I'm going blindfolded with somebody on my shoulders. And do you think I can do it? And everybody goes, Jai, Haribol, you can do it. He goes, all right, who's going to go on my shoulders? Nobody volunteers. Nobody. They're saying, yeah, you can do it. It's great. You're wonderful. You can do it. Blindfolded with somebody. Nobody go on his shoulder. So Prabhupada's like that. He's calling us, all right, here I go. He's not just saying charge. He's saying, follow me. Right. And when the point of actually where the rubber meets the road, putting the money where the mouth is, comes up, the tendency is to keep the Lakshmi in our pocket and to take the little, let's not just go overboard on this, path. So it's kind of interesting, funny, and scary, but also I believe Prabhupada's voice is there saying, go for it, just go for it.
Jai.
Glories to Prabhupada.
Okay, Hari Om Tat Sat. Thanks a lot. We'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Haribol.